Okay, let's learn how to measure workspace performance. This is a slightly, I don't want to say inaccurate, but a slightly tricky business. And we're going to show you at least some approaches you can use to try to improve performance of your workspace from a time perspective. We basically, that's the ultimate thing you want to reduce is the time it takes to run. We used a sort of proxy for that in the previous exercise by doing the feature cache size. This is also going to be another data point. The problem you'll run into is it can be a bit variable because it does depend on a number of things that are happening on your system. But yeah, I'll show you the basic approach of how to test a workspace performance from a time perspective. There's two big things to do when you are, well, a couple big things to do when you're trying to do this. First of all is make sure FME is really the only thing that's running. I'm going to have my browser open on this machine. I'll close Data Inspector. You should try to remove any kind of non-essential software from running when you're doing this. You should also turn off feature caching, which we'll do when we get to it. And you should turn on timestamping. I'm not sure if those are on these machines by default or not. We can have a look at that. That's an FME option. And then you can basically split the process up. Excuse me. Split the process up to measure, well, of course, overall time. And you can also measure reader time, writer time, and transformation time. So to measure reader time, you basically want to disable everything that isn't a reader and run it. You, of course, will run into some slight problems with stuff like feature readers, feature writers. Those you could, I guess, in theory, isolate and run the time for and add it to the reader time, but it's probably easier to just include them as part of the transformation time. So disable everything except the readers, run those, and see how long the dataset takes to run. Obviously, if you disable everything except the writers, there won't be anything to write, and so without feature caching, and so you can't really do it that way to measure writing time. What you can do though is disable the writer itself, and if you then remove the time, well, I should say have everything enabled, disable the have everything enabled and run it, and then have everything except the writers enabled and run it. Take the difference. That'll give you your write time. And then finally, for assessing transformer performance, is make sure you run with writers disabled, take note of the time, and then disable the transformers as well. So that'll give you the time to read only. And then the elapsed time there is the difference for transformation, is the difference between the read time and the read and transform time. So it's kind of this process of disabling different parts of your workspace, running and noting the time. And with that method, you can measure, read, transform, and write. Another point there is make sure you're disabling the actual reader and writer, not just the feature types. Don't have any inspectors or loggers running. And with those methods, you can measure reading, writing, and transformation. And there's a little tip here about how you can do that with feature reader, feature writers, just takes a little extra step. So go ahead and answer the quiz for that one. And then in a moment, we'll move on and actually do some time measuring.